You're jolted awake, well, not literally, but something definitely shifts in the rhythm of Olympus. Because today, Hera has launched her boldest initiative yet, the Divine Appointment System trademark. Let that sink in. Gods now need appointments to do their godly business. Ares can't start a battle without filling out Form BAR9 conflict initiation request and securing an official time slot. Artemis is pacing around the forest grumbling because her moonrise patrol got rescheduled for a more optimal window of lunar exposure. Even Hestia Sweet, Hearthbound Hestia needs to apply for Sacred Flame maintenance access on alternate Thursdays. You make your way through the central plaza of Olympus, which is starting to look less like a divine realm and more like the waiting room of an otherworldly DMV. A golden board levitates midair, glowing with appointment times and room numbers. Beneath it, two gods argue over who gets meeting chamber C at 3:45 for their heroic proclamation review. The god of echoes just keeps repeating everything dramatically. There's also now a receptionist. Her name is Callista, and she's a Titan-level nymph with a talent for tapping her stylus in a way that both soothes and intimidates. You watch as Poseidon tries to storm past her desk only to be redirected with a cheerful, "Do you have an appointment, sir?" His trident slowly droops in resignation. The sea god slinks off, muttering about bureaucratic undertows. Historians still argue whether Callista was a genuine figure or a metaphorical invention of the Hellenistic poets, but scroll fragments from the 2nd century BCE refer to the woman of many schedules who guarded the gates of divine logistics. Either way, she's terrifying. Back in Hera's office, which now has an open plan layout with ergonomic thrones, she's delighting in her newest success, the omnipotent Oracle Scheduler. It's a magical stone tablet that blinks, beeps, and occasionally smokes when overloaded. It's syncing the fates threads with our calendar grid, Hera explains, sipping from a mug that says "I file because I care." Meanwhile, Apollo is furious. Art, he insists, does not schedule. His poetry readings now require a permit. His harp concerts must submit decibel forecasts. He storms into the scheduling office wearing sunglasses indoors, a scarf made of starlight, and zero patience. When denied a spontaneous sunrise performance, he composes a protest ode titled "The Nine Muses of Why This Is Stupid." A fringe detail from early Orphic myths claims Apollo once tried to curse time itself, briefly creating an hour that lasted for an entire day. The appointment system now warns, do not book during Apollo hour. You find yourself walking past the Divine Time Allocation Board, a rotating cylinder managed by Chrono's least favorite intern, Tempest Jr. He's a sleepy demigod with a scroll of endless appointments and one eyebrow permanently raised. He's the kind of being who refers to eternity as "that long meeting I haven't left yet." You stop by Athena's temple again. She's still knee-deep in scheduling flowcharts, holding focus groups with owls, and refining her goddess productivity index. But there's a glimmer of something else in her eye now: skepticism. "This isn't clarity," she murmurs. "It's clutter with extra steps." Still, she files her forms on time. Of course she does. She's Athena. Elsewhere, Dionysus is adapting creatively. He starts hosting spontaneous parties with backdated forms. His festival submissions are now riddled with footnotes like "Don't worry about it and it's already happened." The god of wine has appointed a goat as his administrative assistant. The goat is excellent with paperwork. You trail behind a group of minor deities being trained in efficient invocation protocol. One holds up a draft scroll for blessing new kitchens. Another is working on a standard greeting for dream appearances. A third asks if they can unionize. The trainer pretends not to hear. Quirky myth tidbit: a now lost myth cycle describes a satyr who disguised himself as a scroll in order to escape filing duty, only to be shelved in the underworld library for 3 centuries. In the now expanded Ministry of Scrolls and Declarations, a new department opens, the Office of Heroic Verification. From now on, mortal heroes must undergo background checks and submit personal statements before embarking on quests. Perseus reportedly had to write a 500-word essay on why I deserve to slay this monster. You duck into a side corridor to avoid a very enthusiastic demigoddess ranting about spear calibration forms. In the shadows, you overhear Hermes whispering with Hecate. There's talk of resistance, of loopholes, of creative misfiling. Red tape, Hecate says, is still just tape. You return to the plaza. It's sunset now, or it would be, if Helios hadn't been double booked. The sky flickers slightly, as if the celestial lighting crew isn't quite sure which hue to cue. You sit beside a statue of Hera newly erected, beautifully smug. At her feet, a small sign reads, "For scheduling concerns, please contact your local divine representative." You sigh. Olympus is orderly now. Quiet. Predictable. And somehow, infinitely more exhausting. You awaken not with a start, but with that creeping sense that something has been laminated overnight. Olympus is glossy. There are signs now. Literal signs. Bronze placards affixed to temples and clouds and ambrosia fountains. Authorized use only. Do not invoke without permit. This river may contain mythical beings, enter at your own risk. Even Cerberus is wearing a vest. You rub your eyes as you pass the newly instated Office of Symbolic Compliance. Their job ensuring that all divine iconography meets Hera's new standardized representation code. That's right, tridents must be exactly 3-pronged, thunderbolts must not exceed approved jaggedness ratios, and owls representing wisdom must now complete a licensing course. You watch a disgruntled Athena try to staple a diploma to one of her owls. The owl blinks. It already knows more than the scroll. Historians still argue whether these regulations were meant to preserve sacred symbology or whether Hera simply wanted to stop Ares from rebranding his shield every time a new type of sword came out. A controversial marble relief from the Roman period depicts Hera holding a scroll labeled Visual Consistency, surrounded by extremely unhappy gods. You wander toward Mount Olympus Divine Archive and Trademark Division, which smells faintly of incense and extremely old frustration. Here, every divine symbol, object, and concept must be registered. You overhear a clerk explaining to Hermes that wings on sandals is now a category with 12 subtypes, and they LOL need Form AVS2 for reauthorization. Hermes politely sets the counter on fire. A nearby nymph is being told she can't use the phrase eternal spring without citing Demeter. The Fates, meanwhile, are in the corner arguing about whether metaphor counts as infringement. This is what happens when bureaucracy becomes religion. Inside the archive, you tiptoe past a cavernous chamber full of glowing runes. This is the lexicon of authorized epithets, a living dictionary that updates every time a mortal poet praises a god. Now, unfortunately, those praises must meet formatting requirements. You glance at a scroll labeled, Instructions for Writing Heroic Hymns Revelation 3.1, begin with divine credential line. Include at least one mention of a sanctioned attribute. No hyperbole exceeding 15% over base level praise unless pre-approved. Somewhere, Orpheus rolls in his grave. Probably in triple meter. You head to the temple of Poseidon, where something is visibly wrong. The sea god is standing knee-deep in a reflecting pool with a clipboard and a tape measure, arguing with a junior demigod about trident perimeter violations. But the handle is ceremonial, the demigod insists. It's driftwood. Poseidon throws a very small, legally permissible wave. Fun fringe myth. A Spartan poet once claimed Poseidon used a paperclip to summon sea storms in the off-season. Whether this was satire or lost ritual remains unclear. Back in the plaza, things are oddly quiet. Too quiet. You pass a bard with a sealed lute, his new license is pending. A centaur is whispering poetry to himself so quietly even the muses can't hear it. Apollo, seen from a distance, is staring into the sky like a man denied sunlight. The bureaucratic clampdown is hitting the arts. You stumble into the latest of Hera's creations, the Temple of Aesthetic Appropriateness. A gaudy name for what is essentially the culture ministry of Olympus. They've got statues, scrolls, epics, all lined up for approval. We want worship, says a supervisor with a golden clipboard, not confusion. Confusion is half the fun, mutters a muse. She is quickly escorted out. Inside the temple, walls are lined with emotion classification charts useful for mortal prayers, apparently. You read entries like acceptable despair levels and enthusiasm tiers for offerings. One whole shelf is devoted to proper crying etiquette during visions. You stop when you reach the section on dreams. Apparently, the Department of Nocturnal Messaging has just rolled out new regulations for divine dream content. No more unsanctioned riddles, the scroll reads. All prophetic nightmares must include a footer disclaimer, this dream brought to you by the Pantheon of Olympus. You shiver slightly. Even sleep isn't safe now. Outside, you find Artemis in the woods, sharpening arrows against a tree labeled approved target. She's mumbling about wolves needing licenses and moonlight requiring spectral audits. They can regulate the stars, she says, but they can't make them shine on time. Her next arrow hits a new sky surveillance drone shaped like a dove. As you walk, you pass a group of satyrs practicing their dances inside chalk-drawn boundaries. Rhythmic activity zone, the sign says. One stops mid-leap. Do you think this counts as interpretive violation, he asks. You pretend not to hear. Quirky detail, the chalk oracle of Thebes once predicted this very moment a time will come when joy itself will file for approval. She was laughed out of town. Now her statue wears reading glasses and holds a binder. You wind your way toward Zeus's throne, where something unexpected is happening. The king of gods is sulking. Not dramatically, not angrily, quietly. Hera is presenting the latest compliance metrics, glowing scrolls hovering in tidy rows. Zeus just nods, eyes unfocused. Great, he mumbles. Wonderful. Love it. Because here's the thing, power, unstructured, was Zeus's playground. The sudden storm, the reckless love affair, the lightning bolt hurled without warning, these were his calling cards. But now he's filling out a sky disruption notice just to thunder. You see it click in his eyes, the realization that he's no longer surprising. He's scheduled, reviewed, cross-referenced. Even the king is being filed. You wake up to the sound of silence. But not the good kind. Not the crisp, early morning hush before sunrise. No, this is the uneasy silence of a system grinding to a halt. You wander into the agora and notice that, for the first time in forever, no one's arguing about lyre tuning or throwing a discus with magical enhancements. Even the muses are quietly sipping regulation ambrosia, room temperature only, Section 4B of the Beverage Act. The divine bureaucracy has done the unthinkable, it has slowed Olympus itself. Today's memo, now posted on every olive tree and cloud bank, introduces something Hera is calling the myth alignment protocols. In theory, it's meant to standardize all retellings of divine exploits, ensuring consistency across temples, cults, and mortals' late-night storytelling sessions. But what it really means is this: all gods must now submit narrative reports before engaging in anything remotely myth-worthy. That's right. No more spontaneous transformations, dramatic entrances, or metaphor-heavy punishments without prior approval and documentation. Ares is furious. He claims war waits for no paperwork. He storms into the Ministry of Mythical Affairs with 12 Spartans and demands a waiver. They hand him Form War X-93 and a scroll titled Suggested Smiting Windows Non-Peak Hours. Ares reads exactly 3 words before punching a column in half. The column was not up to code anyway, so everyone just quietly notes the incident and continues. Historians still argue whether Hera genuinely wanted to streamline the mythic canon or whether she was simply trying to embarrass Zeus by restricting his more adventurous escapades. Some even point to early mortal records in which Hera is listed as Keeper of Consistency, a title removed after too many poetic complaints about predictable plot lines. You peek into the back chambers of the Myth Bureau, where a trio of demigods is arguing over how many swans is too many for a seduction narrative. One proposes a limit of 2 per calendar year, another suggests requiring a mortal's notarized consent first. In the corner, a Cyclops is trying to fill out a diagram for unexpected livestock appearances in romantic subplots. Fringe detail: at least one version of the Narcissus myth now includes a footnote saying, reflective surfaces must be pre-registered under section Narc 112. No one knows if this was Hera's idea or just the nymphs messing with the paperwork. You wander outside into a plaza where the gods have gathered for an open forum. Hera's new idea for resolving divine narrative conflicts. There are nameplates, folding chairs, and passive-aggressive refreshments. Apollo raises his hand to argue that any rule requiring approval for musical competitions goes against the very spirit of spontaneous glory. "Do you expect me to file a sonata?" he snaps. Calliope, ever calm, points to the new improvisation acknowledgement clause. As long as it's under 10 minutes and contains fewer than 3 allusions to fate, she says, you're fine. Apollo writes a protest song on the spot and is told to submit it through the ballad review portal. You move toward a small outpost near the edge of the clouds labeled Narrative Compliance Field Office. There, a weary faun is logging incident reports from the mortal realm. One report notes a hero slaying a hydra without registering the monster first. Unlicensed questing, the faun groans. Third one this week. The hydra, ironically, had all its forms submitted on time. Every head. In triplicate. As you're watching, Hermes appears out of nowhere, dramatically slapping a scroll on the desk. "I am invoking my right to literary obscurity," he declares. Clause 72c, I get 1 unsupervised myth per cycle. The faun sighs. "You already used that on the Dream Goat incident." Hermes grins. "Did I, though?" and disappears in a puff of non-compliant glitter. There's a palpable sense of tension. You feel it in the air, thick, papery, full of conditional clauses and divine side-eye. And that's when the real trouble starts. The mortals are noticing. Back on Earth, there's confusion. Farmers praying for rain now have to fill out supplemental supplication documents. Oracles speak only in officially approved riddles. One hero, reportedly, spent 2 weeks waiting for a license to slay a cursed windmill, only to be told it was technically a misclassified artifact. In the Temple of Hera, she sits with her new assistant Notarius the pigeon reading status reports from every realm. Non-compliance among minor river gods is up 11%, Notarius coos. "We may need a refresher memo." Hera barely blinks. "Then issue it," she says. "Label it as urgent but friendly." In a darker corner of Olympus, Hades finally gets wind of all this and sends a strongly worded death-scented scroll to Hera. "The underworld has always been self-regulating," it reads. "Do not attempt to classify death. Hera sends him a marble bust labeled external agency and a note saying, "We'll be watching your metaphors. You pass a mortal petition nailed to a tree, let the gods be wild again." It's signed in charcoal, blood, and bad spelling. Hera has it filed under public sentiment low priority. Still, you begin to hear murmurs. Dionysus is calling a secret meeting beneath the vineyards. Artemis has begun hosting midnight hunts without logging the participants. Even Hephaestus is building unauthorized gadgets, things with blinking lights and suspiciously flame-resistant casings. It's as if the gods, all-powerful and ageless, are starting to remember what it felt like to be unfiled. To be uncontained. And you step carefully around a new sign that reads, "Caution, narrative deviations may be subject to retroactive censorship." You look up. The stars haven't changed. But they feel filtered. The next day, a mild chaos simmers beneath the neat lines of scrolls and stamped declarations. You wake to the chirping of Notarius not in song, but in bureaucratic distress. His latest delivery contains 32 unsigned petitions, 12 sarcastic amendment suggestions from Apollo, and one very small doodle of a goat on fire labeled Myth Potential, TBD. You can feel it. Olympus is starting to chafe under the weight of its own rules. Today, Hera unveils the mythical resource allocation framework. It's a glorious nightmare of a chart, rolled out in front of the assembled pantheon. Rows and rows of divine energy quotas, realm assignments, time slot reservations, and a mysterious line item labeled Emergency Pegasus Backup Feed. The gods squint at it like it's a cursed Sudoku. According to the new framework, each god now has a finite allotment of narrative impact units news per lunar cycle. Want to make a grand entrance in a thundercloud that's 3 news. Transform a mortal into a vegetable for poor manners 5 news. Launch an unapproved epic saga involving betrayal, forbidden love, and someone turning into a constellation 15 news, and you'll need to submit a cross-domain justification form. Zeus, predictably, scoffs. "I am the king of the gods," he booms. "I am the justification." Hera smiles. "And now you have the paperwork to prove it. Form ZK001. You trail behind as Zeus tries to summon a thunderstorm in protest. A scroll immediately floats down from the clouds and informs him he has already used his atmospheric quota for the week. The thundercloud fizzles like a sad fog machine. Historical footnote: ancient weather patterns did change suddenly during this mythical period. Some scholars blame solar cycles. Others point to divine temper tantrums being tightly regulated for the first time. Down the hill, Demeter is trying to apply for seasonal exemptions. She's waving a sheaf of grain in one hand and a stack of complaint forms in the other. If spring doesn't arrive on time, she warns, you'll have more than a paperwork jam. You'll have an angry underworld mother with trust issues. Meanwhile, Hestia, the goddess of the hearth and home, hasn't spoken in days. She just quietly tends the central Olympic fire, occasionally flipping through the divine energy consumption guidelines and sighing like someone who knows the world is ending via spreadsheets. But the most outrageous entry today comes not from the gods, but from the mortals. A traveling bard, young, dramatic, very into feathers, has dared to submit an independent myth proposal. He wants to write his own story, he claims, featuring a new hero who doesn't answer to the gods. The proposal includes sketches, some questionable rhyming couplets, and a sample song titled "To Hell with Olympus" ballad in D minor. The bard is called before the narrative tribunal. Hera presides, flanked by Athena and one very tired satyr named Jeff, who is now the official scribe of mortal overreach. The bard speaks. Why must every tale bow to form? Why must every miracle be managed? Stories are meant to breathe. Athena adjusts her glasses. And breathing, she says, requires a regulated environment. Historians still debate whether this bard ever existed. Some claim his ballad lives on in whispered lyrics heard in remote mountain villages. Others say he was absorbed into a lesser myth about talking sheep and lives on only in footnotes. But here is she's unmoved. She tightens the new restrictions. You now need approval to even start a prophecy. You catch Hermes loitering behind the tribunal, doodling down with metadata on the walls in disappearing ink. He winks at you. Freedom, he whispers, is now a loophole. Elsewhere, the unintended consequences continue. At the Temple of Poseidon, waves have started behaving strangely, crashing in geometric patterns, refusing to go ashore without a tide activity form signed in salt. Poseidon throws a trident at the ocean in frustration, but the sea just spits it back with a note, form TP8 missing. Action denied. Quirky fact: for a brief period, sailors reported fish schooling in the shapes of bar graphs. You find yourself back at the Ministry of Mythical Flow Control, where minor deities now clock in using enchanted hourglasses. The god of echoes has lost his voice, temporarily revoked for unscheduled reverberation. A nymph is crying because her request to haunt a pond gently has been downgraded to ripple supervisor. Even the muses are quiet. One of them, Erato, the muse of love poetry, is seen filling out a verse pre-approval form, whispering meter counts like a student cramming for a metric exam. And yet, even in the stillness, you sense resistance brewing. In the olive groves, Dionysus is hosting what he calls a compliance awareness gathering, which is exactly as coded as it sounds. The wine flows freely. There are no permits. Someone juggles satyrs. You sneak away just as Hera's filing harpies arrive to inspect the grapevine spacing. In a rarely used corner of the sky, a rebel document circulates. It's unsigned, unauthorized, and printed on unauthorized parchment. It reads, "A myth is a fire, not a file. Let it burn." You tuck the parchment into your robe. Notarius sees you. He gives a slow, knowing blink. For a moment, you think the pigeon might wink. And as the day ends, the scrolls settle. The stars flicker on, one by one. You wonder, is structure keeping Olympus from collapsing, or is it the very thing tearing it apart? Night falls on Olympus with the quiet dignity of a heavily monitored dimmer switch. The stars blink on in pre-approved constellations. Hera had a sky mapping policy ratified just last week, and you stroll beneath them, avoiding scheduled falling stars marked with little red flags that say impact zone, do not romanticize. You pause near the reflective pool of divine self-assessment, where gods and goddesses are meant to spend time in regulated introspection. Tonight, it's empty. No one wants to stare into their reflection and answer questions like, have I been mythologically productive this quarter, or do my epic choices align with my domain goals? But soon, whispers begin to reach your ears. Not the magical kind, though those are scheduled for Thursdays, but the regular kind. Hushed voices in corners. Scrolls passed hand to hand beneath benches. Athena's owls, once fastidious note-takers, now look over their shoulders and shuffle their talons nervously. You've stumbled into Olympus' quietest insurrection, the midnight mythic resistance. It's less of a revolution and more of a group project gone rogue. You follow the whispers to a cave just behind Artemis Temple, one that doesn't appear on any map, and for good reason. Inside, a semicircle of gods, demigods, muses, and one inexplicably present chimera are sitting on cushions, speaking in hushed tones. Dionysus leads the group, naturally. He's barefoot, holding a goblet of something that glows faintly purple, and wearing a sash that reads temporary chair of non-compliance. Friends, he says, Tonight we gather not to overthrow Hera, she did just make us fill out a coup form, but to remember who we were before the binders. The crowd murmurs agreement. You spot the muse Calliope sharpening a pencil dramatically. Even Hades is here, sipping from a World S1 Underworld Manager mug and nodding like someone who just received a memo written in blood. Dionysus reveals the plan, Project Myth Drift. It's simple in theory: let stories wander again. Let miracles happen off schedule. Let heroes rise without licensing fees. Let monsters roam, just a bit. And most importantly, no forms, no stamps, and absolutely no pigeons. Historical note: several real-world scholars believe this myth drift era explains a sudden surge in wildly inconsistent Greek tales like the one where Zeus turns into a flaming cheese wheel. Historians still argue whether that myth was satire or simply a paperwork evading stunt gone wrong. But back to you. You slip into the group, careful not to step on the Chimera's tail. There's talk of spreading false memos, documents that look official but actually declare things like free epic battles in Sector 4 or spontaneous transformation hour, no approval needed. The idea is to clog the system until it chokes on its own ambition. Athena shows up halfway through the meeting. Everyone tenses. She removes her helmet. I'm not here for Hera, she says. I'm here because a fully optimized system should include feedback loops. A collective exhale. She joins the circle. Meanwhile, Hera is busy drafting her newest creation, the Mythological Compliance and Evaluation Initiative MCEI. It's a set of divine auditors who will visit gods unannounced and issue spontaneous performance alignment scrolls. The first unlucky recipient is Hermes, who is told to improve punctuality and minimize interpretive ambiguity. Hermes responds by teleporting into 17 dreams simultaneously and yelling, "Define punctuality." Back in the cave, Dionysus introduces a symbol for their rebellion, a cracked amphora, representing the beauty of imperfection. Stickers are passed out. You slap one on your toga, feeling an oddly exhilarating mix of mischief and community. One of the satyrs writes a resistance anthem. The chorus goes, "No stamps, no scrolls, just mythic souls. Let chaos bloom in unfiled rolls." A little off-key, but spirited. Quirky myth fact: for a brief time, Olympus experienced spontaneous rhyming outbreaks, traced back to enchanted ink leaking from a rebel lyricist's quill. Entire temples spoke in couplets until Hera traced it and filed a rhyme injunction. The next morning, things begin to unravel. Zeus is seen leading a thunder drill without filling out Form WR3. When asked, he just bellows, "I am the form." Hades releases 3 underworld spirits for creative haunting. Apollo holds an unauthorized sunrise concert, only 1 lyre string, but still illegal. You peek into the Ministry of Compliance. There's tension in the air. Notarius the pigeon is twitchy. Harpies are flying in erratic loops. The rubber stamp satyr accidentally approves a heroic catastrophe application, thinking it was a lunch request. Athena reports a mysterious flux in the efficiency index. "My charts are spiraling," she mutters, watching a graph curve off the scroll and into the margin labeled "Here be nonsense." Then it happens, the first mythical surge. A mortal hero, who was supposed to slay a minor basilisk after a 3-month approval wait, instead does it in real-time live, during a bardic open mic. The story catches fire. No one authorized it. No one can trace it. Hera receives a complaint scroll. She opens it. It's blank, except for a lipstick print and the words, "Chaos says hi." The resistance is working. But Hera, she's not done. She summons the ultimate instrument of divine bureaucracy, the Oversight Oracle. A shimmering, floating cube that reviews all mythical activity in real time and issues binding compliance directives via interpretive dance. It hasn't been used since the Minotaur in marketing incident of 742 BCE. The oracle activates. The room goes cold. And you feel a familiar scroll tucked in your robe, the one from the rebel document. You don't remember grabbing it. Maybe it found you. You open it. The words shift slightly as you read them. If you want freedom, stop asking for permission. The oracle pauses mid-dance. A glitch in its shimmer. Maybe, just maybe, the myths are waking up. The oracle hums faintly, an unsettling frequency somewhere between harp music and a dental drill. It spins slowly in midair, casting fractured beams of divine authority across the ministry floor. Each time it detects an unauthorized myth in progress, say, a mortal who slays a hydra without filling form BH22 Beast Hazard encounter, it releases a delicate puff of gold dust. The dust floats toward a harpist stationed in the corner, who immediately begins composing a warning jingle. You back away slowly, careful not to disturb the scroll in your robe. It seems to pulse gently, like it's alive or at least under heavy magical suggestion. Around you, the gods have begun acting, strangely. Not turn into a goose and seduce a maiden, strange that's baseline for Olympus, but quietly paranoid. Apollo triple checks his lyre case before playing a note. Demeter whispers to a wheat stalk before planting it. Even Ares wears a tunic that says, "I respect interdepartmental boundaries." Hera is pleased. The oracle, she insists, isn't a punishment. It's a clarifier, she tells the council. The myths are messy. This will give them clean endings, proper structure, balanced plot arcs. Historians still argue whether Hera truly believed she was refining myth or just breaking it down into easily packageable narratives. Fringe theorists claim she was trying to create the first ever divine streaming service, where mortals could subscribe to legends, weekly and ad-free. Meanwhile, the Resistance holds its next meeting inside a hollow olive tree. It's hosted by Artemis, who demands everyone remove their sandals before entry so the forest doesn't file a noise complaint. You sit between two nymphs clutching styluses and gossiping about a new rebellion tactic, the Trojan form. A seemingly routine scroll that, when opened, spreads non-compliance through subtle riddles and heavily implied loopholes. One version caused the entire Department of River Permits to accidentally approve a centaur-led water ballet. There's a shared sense of hope in the group now. Myths are cracking open again. Spontaneous transformations. Unexpected prophecies. A rogue muse got inspired by a cloud and painted a landscape that now moves in real time. You overhear Hermes whispering to Pan, she's losing the thread. Pan just grins, tuning a set of panpipes that sound like administrative disapproval. Then Hera plays her next hand. One morning, Olympus wakes to find the mythological achievement board installed across the skyline. It's massive. Glowing. Every goddess name is listed, followed by a series of metrics, hero approval ratings, transformation success rate, average quest duration, number of passive-aggressive scrolls sent. There's a running bar at the bottom labeled Total Divine Order, currently fluctuating between mildly organized and screaming into the void. Quirky fact: the board was originally meant to be a constellation called the Spreadsheet, but Zeus vetoed it for aesthetic reasons. You stand beneath it with a group of muses who are clearly unimpressed. It's performance art, one mutters. But not the fun kind. Things escalate quickly. The oracle begins intercepting dreams. Mortals trying to consult oracles of their own suddenly find themselves dreaming in fine print. One hero reports a dream where he was told, "Your journey has been redirected to an approved sub-quest. Press 1 to continue." Hecate is furious. Dreams are my domain, she hisses, eyes glowing. Let us see how she handles nonlinear dreamscape logic. That night, Hera dreams of a chicken debating a lamppost over which has more authority. Even Athena begins to fray. You find her arguing with one of her own owls, who refuses to update a battle chart because the ink smells like control. The oracle attempts to discipline the owl. The owl bites it. You spend more time with the resistance now. One satyr has composed a series of anti-memos scrolls that only display blank pages until read with a sense of playful rebellion. They've begun to circulate among the lesser gods. Some treat them like sacred texts. Others use them as party invitations. Then, finally, the oracle missteps. It tries to correct a spontaneous act of love. Two minor deities, Thallo, goddess of spring blooms, and Aristeus, god of bees, fall for each other during an unapproved picnic. It's small, quiet. No epics written. No mortals harmed. But the oracle detects it. Flags it. Issues a citation for unauthorized emotional trajectory. That's the moment Hera loses half the council. Apollo tears the citation scroll in half and uses it to start a bonfire. Artemis declares the oracle formally irrelevant. Dionysus pours wine over its shimmer until it short-circuits and begins glitching in sonnets. Historians point to this event as the turning point in divine governance, when structure cracked beneath the weight of poetry. The Ministry of Scrolls and Declarations suffers its first official collapse. The ceiling gives way under the sheer volume of cross-referenced annexes. The filing harpies attempt to save the records but are grounded by a Category 7 scroll storm. You're standing outside when the oracle finally implodes. Not in fire or lightning. Just a slow unraveling of golden threads, each releasing a different unregulated story back into the world. Zeus watches it fade. Should be known, he mutters. Can't format thunder. You return to the olive tree that night. There's music, unplanned. Laughter that isn't filed. Even Hera's missing from the meeting, not defeated, just considering. Some say she sat on her veranda that evening, sipping ambrosia and watching the stars flicker off schedule, and whispered, "Well played." You're handed another scroll. No stamp. No seal. It just reads, "Let the myths be messy." The myths flood back like a dam has burst, and not the kind Hermes forgot to file the safety inspection for. You walk the hills of Olympus now as if through a waking dream. Centaurs race each other along paths that didn't exist yesterday. Muses wander in unpredictable pairs, composing sonnets mid-sneeze. Even the clouds are behaving badly, forming suggestive shapes just to get under Hera's skin. You're not sure if it's rebellion or restoration. Either way, the oracle is gone. Its last whisper was a bureaucratic sigh that echoed off the cliffs of Thessaly and startled a sleeping kraken into migrating inland. The Divine Achievement Board currently being used as a surf ramp by Poseidon's nephews. Still, Hera hasn't given up. She's regrouping. Inside a new structure, half amphitheater, half courtroom, with a splash of spa, she opens something called the Divine Tribunal for Narrative Integrity. There are cushions, styluses, and a very stern Gorgon named Barbara who enforces proper seating posture. Here, myths are now debated. Case 1. Should Heracles' labors be condensed into a 3-quest mini-series to accommodate modern attention spans? Case 2. Did Odysseus file a maritime route change when he decided to detour via Circe? Case 3. Is turning into a bull and seducing mortals still acceptable, or is it now classified as a mythological HR violation? You sit in the gallery, nibbling on ambrosia popcorn. Historians still argue whether the tribunal was an attempt to control the myths again or simply Hera's way of saving face without retracting her entire bureaucratic empire. The minutes from those sessions are written in riddles and marginalia. One scroll was found with the phrase trial by narrative underlined 300 times and a doodle of Hera setting fire to a paperclip. The tribunal's first ruling: all spontaneous transformations must be contextually justified. Immediately, 3 nymphs and 1 mortal turn into very confused hedgehogs. But resistance, ever adaptive, finds loopholes faster than the tribunal can rule. Hermes crafts a fake schedule with overlapping time slots labeled just vibes. Apollo rebrands his sun chariot route as an interpretive performance. Dionysus starts distributing blank scrolls called mood reports that explode into confetti when opened under stress. Meanwhile, Notarius the pigeon, once a proud enforcer of bureaucratic elegance, is now frequently found playing dice with river spirits. Rumor has it he moonlights as a jazz messenger, delivering abstract compliments to forgotten temples. You wander past Athena's temple again. The owls have organized a silent protest by perching in the shape of a giant question mark. Athena herself now keeps a flex myth chalkboard, where gods and mortals can anonymously submit plot twists. Today's entry reads: a cyclops falls in love with a constellation and builds a ladder out of pomegranates. Approved, reluctantly. Quirky fringe tidbit: an obscure demigod named Cleofax attempted to build a bureaucracy within the rebellion, called it anarcho-forms, and was promptly ignored by everyone including his own shadow. The mood on Olympus is changing. The laughter has a rhythm again. Drama unfolds without being logged. Hera's grip is loosening, though you can still see her watching from her high window, fingers tapping a scroll edge, eyes narrowed but calculating. She introduces one last countermeasure: the Mythological Clarity Committee. 3 gods, rotating weekly, who must sign off on every new tale before it spreads. For 1 week, it even works. The committee approves a tale of a hero who wrestles metaphors into submission and builds a town out of similes. Then Hecate swaps their ink with dream juice. The next tale involves a flying goat that eats secrets. The committee resigns mid-narration. You spend time now in odd corners of Olympus. The whispering groves. The talking stream near Dionysus' vineyard. A cave where satyrs hold slam poetry nights. Everywhere you go, stories are leaking again, wild, illogical, uncatalogued. One day, you trip over a folder. It's labeled Pending Myths, Abandoned Drafts. Inside, dozens of half-finished tales. A hero with a tale. A potion that speaks only in questions. A god of sneezing. And a short note, in Hera's handwriting: let them finish themselves. You realize the truth: she's stopped fighting. Or rather, she's redirected. Because one morning, a new scroll appears in every temple. A single sentence: all stories are valid, but some require better lighting. It's not an edict. It's not even legally binding. But it sparks something. You see a muse pick up a forgotten myth and stage it by moonlight. You watch Artemis nod at a river spirit telling jokes to frogs. You even catch Hera just once rewriting a scroll in invisible ink, smiling slightly as it vanishes. The Ministry of Scrolls is now a performance space. Filing cabinets hum quietly as set pieces. The rubber stamp Cyclops runs a cafe inside what used to be the permit vault. You sit by the fountain one evening, scroll in lap, ink on fingers, and realize you've stopped worrying about structure. You've started writing again. And not even in triplicate. The sun rises no longer strictly at 6:02 a.m. as per Apollo's amended celestial timetable, but with the kind of gentle unpredictability that once made Olympus magical in the first place. And you wake to find a scroll by your feet. Notarius must be dropped it in his latest jazz-fueled interpretive route. It reads, Notice of Experimental Myth Authorization, you may proceed. No signature. Just a faint lipstick kiss, a small drawing of a thunderbolt with googly eyes, and what might be goat hoof prints. Somehow, you've been unofficially approved to tell your own myth. The only problem, you're not entirely sure how. You wander Olympus looking for inspiration. Near the fountain of oracle residue, you pass a muse holding auditions for The Godfather, Myth Edition. Next to her, a satyr recites an epic about a fork that defeats fate with a well-timed salad. Further up, you find Hera not in a throne or a tribunal seat, but hunched over a table. She is surrounded by drafts, sketches, post-it notes, and what appears to be a very passive-aggressive quill that keeps correcting her grammar mid-sentence. I just wanted structure, she mutters, then looks up at you. Is that so wrong? You shake your head. It wasn't wrong. It just wasn't right for Olympus. Historians still argue whether Hera's grand bureaucracy was meant to preserve myths or erase the ones that didn't serve her agenda. Some claim she feared chaos, others say she was just really into stationery. In the background, you hear Hephaestus hammering together a creative freedom pavilion using repurposed filing cabinets. It's shaped like a flaming harp and gently hums when the wind passes through. You wander through it. Inside are relics from the brief age of order, a list of rejected divine job titles: God of Wet Towels, Muse of Technical Difficulties, a map of Zeus' proposed thunderbolt usage zones, and a giant chart labeled Fate Compliance Metrics. Someone's drawn a mustache on it. You spend the afternoon with Hermes. He's taken up improv myth-telling, gathering mortals and minor deities in a circle and riffing tales from their shoe sizes. You, he points to a dryad, fell in love with a sunflower who could recite tax codes. The dryad swoons. The audience laughs. You're learning something vital here. Myths need breathing room. Aphrodite, of course, is thriving. She's running a late-night salon called Ambrosia and Oversharing, where gods spill secrets and mortals earn divine gossip points redeemable for enchanted hairpins. You catch a nymph whispering about the time Hera tried to trademark myth, only to be legally challenged by a chorus of rebellious owls. Meanwhile, the tribunal disbanded. Replaced with something much stranger, the Council of Open Endings. They don't decide outcomes, they just ask increasingly ambiguous questions like, but what if the monster wanted to be misunderstood? Fringe fact of the day: a mortal named Gary tried to patent a myth about socks that grant wisdom. He was immediately turned into a line of abstract poetry and now only speaks in haikus. You visit Athena. She's in her temple's back room, drawing a complex flowchart titled Structure plus Chaos equals Divine Mayhem. A headset-wearing owl hoots softly. I'm not giving up, she says. But maybe. I'll call it a framework now. Even Hera seems to be loosening her grip. The scroll of departmental clarification now includes an appendix titled Acceptable Ambiguities. It lists things like questionably symbolic fruit, mystery clouds, and unverified acts of heroic pouting. One night, you join a gathering under the stars. Not a Form GNF 17 sanctioned assembly, just a real one. There's music, poetry, a statue that spontaneously tells knock-knock jokes, and a three-headed dog snoring softly beside the buffet. You sit beside Dionysus, who's wearing a toga made entirely of wine labels. It was never about rules, he says dreamily. It was about rhythm. Bureaucracy has no rhythm. You nod, unsure whether that's profound or just the ambrosia talking. The gods begin passing a scroll around, each adding a line to a new myth. No rules. No structure. Just pure narrative flow. You take the scroll, heart racing, and write, once, on a mountain that forgot its own name, a girl danced with thunder because it asked politely. You hand it on. Nobody laughs. Nobody critiques. They just smile. Across Olympus, the balance is shifting again. Not back to chaos, not forward to rigidity, but somewhere new. Flexible. Alive. You peek into the now defunct Ministry of Scrolls. It's become a library of failed attempts, annotated with jokes and memories. One scroll reads, reclassified as performance art. Another simply says, oops. There's even a statue of Notarius the pigeon, wearing sunglasses and flipping a tiny scroll like a coin. Beneath it, a plaque, he tried. We all did. In the background, you hear a lyre. Not perfectly tuned. Not planned. Just playing. You realize something as you watch the stars blink to life, random, brilliant, and utterly unfiled. This is what Hera never understood. Order isn't the opposite of myth. It's just one of its costumes. By morning, there's dew on the amphory and sleep crusting the corners of even the most divine eyes. You yawn, half human, half honorary myth, and roll over to find that the entire courtyard has been rebranded. A new sign swings gently above the old tribunal chamber, Department of Oops, mythical oversight now with snacks. Below it, a dryad distributes ambrosia-flavored granola bars while a satyr tries to file a claim about a stolen loot, only to get distracted by the granola and forget why he was mad. You wander inside and find a very tired-looking Hermes using a broken filing cabinet as a footrest. We're trying something new, he says, eyes twinkling. It's called letting stuff happen. The new policy, if you can call it that, is elegantly simple. Events unfold, myths evolve, and then someone, somewhere, shrugs and says, let us see where it goes. This isn't to say there's no order. Just elastic order. Like divine yoga. The scroll of departmental clarification has now been officially downgraded to guidelines, with doodles in the margins and a post-it from Dionysus that reads, "Can we get a snack cart?" Hera, meanwhile, has pivoted. Not retreated, mind you. Pivoted. Now she runs Olympus' first strategic myth planning retreat. It's an open-air seminar where deities gather with cappuccinos to discuss themes like chaos as brand identity and narrative loops, a blessing or a curse. You catch her mid-presentation, waving a laser pointer made from a sunbeam. Myths thrive in suggestion, not surveillance, she's saying. The irony is not lost on anyone. Historians still argue whether this was always her plan, whether she orchestrated the entire bureaucratic art to teach Olympus the value of narrative freedom. Others point to her stress ball, shaped like Zeus' face, and think, probably not. You head toward the edge of the forum of elastic consequence, where stories now grow like wild vines. There's a man who insists he's been halfway turned into a constellation for years and just needs one more heroic monologue to finish. A sphinx offers riddles in exchange for fanfiction. And someone has established the Ministry of Vibes, which evaluates myths based on aesthetic alone. Quirky myth fact: Pegasus now moderates a weekly storytelling slam. Winners receive limited edition sky doodles visible only to those who believe in plot twists. You pass Artemis, who's taken to whispering her tales to trees and letting the wind decide what gets remembered. If they come back tomorrow, it was meant to last, she says with a shrug. Across the way, Apollo's music schedule now lists sunrise solos and existential ballads played at irregular intervals. No more Form GNS, he announces dramatically during one 4:36 a.m. set, strumming a lyre that occasionally sighs when it's tired. Just Form feels. The divine pigeon Notarius has gone rogue. Freed from scheduling, he now delivers unsolicited plot twists. A scroll lands beside you reading, new myth unlocked, the time the moon forgot gravity. You tuck it away, just in case. Athena, at first skeptical, has joined forces with Hecate to launch a think tank, speculative mything and adaptive lore. They're mapping emotional resonance across pantheons. It's mostly pins, yarn, and cryptic murmuring, but you get the feeling they're onto something big. Even Jeff the Satyr, remember him, has found new purpose as the god of unintended consequences. His temple is basically a porch with a rocking chair and a sign that says, "Well, that escalated." People leave him offerings of burnt toast, love letters never sent, and socks with no partners. You take a break under a fig tree. A nymph leans over and offers you a scroll. Want to add something, she asks. You unroll it. It's a collaborative myth. One that never ends. Each line written by someone who decided the story wasn't done yet. You write, and in the space between one rule and the next, they found music that only the stars understood. It fits perfectly. That's the thing about stories, they don't always behave. You can try to file them, sort them, even trademark them. But at the end of the day, they're like gods in disguise. Wild. Tricksy. Unstoppable. Later, you walk past the ruins of the original tribunal, a few scorched chairs, a crumbling podium, and one very singed pen now enshrined in a glass case labeled "Lesson Learned." Aphrodite's note is stuck beside it, "Next time, less rules. More glitter." There's laughter echoing through Olympus again, the good kind. The kind that bubbles up between lines of a freshly written myth and reminds everyone they're part of something not just ancient, but alive. You stretch your arms, gaze at the sky, and realize you're not tired, not yet. Maybe because there's one more twist waiting in the scrolls. Or maybe because the story isn't quite done with you. You wake to find Olympus has taken up journaling. Seriously, there's a temple now dedicated entirely to reflective mythical practice. Inside, gods sit cross-legged on clouds, scribbling in divine notebooks. A chalkboard at the entrance reads, "Today's prompt, what if the prophecy is just really good marketing?" Hera's there too, sipping chamomile ambrosia and gently suggesting that Zeus consider expressing his power struggles in metaphor. He's holding a quill like it might explode. "Do I start with Dear Me or Dear Destiny?" he mutters. You slide past a group therapy circle for neglected minor gods. One is crying because nobody remembers the difference between the god of rain delays and the god of wet socks. Another is proud to have been accidentally worshipped during a plumbing mishap in Crete. They high-five with damp fingers. Meanwhile, the Department of Oops has rebranded again. It's now MythFlow HQ. Its mission to keep the narrative energy circulating. No forms. Just vibes. The break room is a labyrinth that sometimes forgets to let people out, but there's always tea. You head over to what used to be the complaint annex. It's now a museum exhibit titled A Brief History of Grievances. A guided tour explains how a divine complaint once spawned a new constellation, and how Dionysus' original complaint about grape-stained linens led to the invention of togas. A satyr docent asks if you'd like to donate your own minor inconvenience. You write, "Was once turned into a teacup. No one noticed." They nod gravely and hang it with the others. Historians still argue whether this entire shift was prompted by actual divine growth or whether everyone just got exhausted. A few point to a very incriminating papyrus where Hera is quoted saying, "If I can't control them, maybe I can curate them." Curate she has. Now, divine summits begin with a feelings check-in. On a scale from blessed to smote, how are we today, asks Athena, clipboard in hand. One Fury says medium wrath, another votes ambivalently vengeful. It's progress. You sit in on a workshop titled Reframing Eternal Conflict as Collaborative Storytelling. Ares is there. He's trying. His role-play scenario about setting boundaries with mortals includes at least 3 fewer spears than last week. Quirky myth fact: Hephaestus has invented a device that translates divine grunts into poetry. It mostly outputs free verse that sounds like someone losing a hammer. In the meadow just beyond the Temple of Unfinished Endings, Apollo is playing a lyre duet with a satyr using a harp made from tree roots. Improvised myths, he explains. We play, and then the story follows. You're offered a scroll to contribute. You hesitate, then write. Once, a dream sat down and asked for directions. They nod approvingly. This LOL go in the archive of speculative truths. Nearby, Hecate opens a pop-up shadow theater. No scripts. The audience whispers suggestions. Tonight, the performance is The Time a Mortal Outsmarted Fate Using Only a Cupcake and Mild Confidence. You laugh so hard you spill your starlight juice. Athena catches you later and hands you a scroll. We've been watching you, she says, eyes twinkling. You're adapting. You're mything well. You open it, it's blank, except for a title, The One Who Kept Showing Up. You tuck it in your satchel, unsure whether to be flattered or worried. Later, while lounging near the fountain of questionably true prophecies, you overhear Hera giving a speech. We've learned something, she says. Control is fragile. But participation that's divine. Hermes is nodding. Even Zeus, who still doesn't understand how feelings work, is clapping. Behind them, Notarize the pigeon is now doing performance art. Today's piece involves spilling ink in patterns that might be constellations. Or maybe just coffee stains. You walk through a corridor of softly glowing scrolls. Each one pulses gently, a heartbeat of some unfinished tale. They beckon with possibility. You brush your fingers over one. It purrs. And then you find it the newest department. No flashy sign. Just a bench and a nymph with a knowing smile. Department of letting things be, she says. Sometimes, stories end. And that's okay. You sit. You breathe. No paperwork. No divine memos. Just the sky above, a little too full of stars, and the soft hum of a story that knows it doesn't need to shout. You open your eyes to find the wind has changed. It carries no decree, no scroll, no ink-smudged memo, just the quiet rustle of Olympus easing into something new. Not silence, exactly, but softness. Like someone turned down the volume on divine drama and turned up the ambience setting. You're walking past the temple of paperwork, and it's empty. Not abandoned, just paused. The filing harpy naps atop a stack of forms, her wings wrapped around a pink ribbon labeled pending, eternal questions. Her feathers rise and fall in steady rhythm, and for once, no one disturbs her. You wander, unsure of your purpose, and find yourself at Hera's private garden. It's where the divine roses bloom in suspiciously symmetrical patterns. You'd once seen them color-coded by mood, by celestial alignment, even by Zeus' projected tantrum frequency. But today no system. Just petals. Hera sits on a bench, shoes off, toes dipped in a fountain that hums with cosmic stillness. She doesn't look up when you approach, but she gestures for you to sit. I've called a recess, she murmurs, eyes on the water. You blink. Like a divine intermission. She nods. Even empires need breath. Even goddesses. You both watch as a dragonfly skims the surface, then hesitates, as if confused that no one else asked it to submit a flight plan. Historians still argue whether this marked a true philosophical shift in Olympus history or just Hera's strategic nap window. But the result is the same: less ruling, more being. And the gods are changing. Dionysus opens a vineyard where the vines are encouraged to grow however they want. Apollo holds sunset concerts where everyone is invited to play skill optional. Artemis leads stargazing hikes with pauses for existential sighing. Even Hades starts hosting a once-a-month underworld book club, themed, "You can't take it with you, so let us discuss it." You catch a glimpse of Hermes teaching mortals how to navigate using shadows. "The stars are fine," he says, "but you learn more from what's trying to hide." Quirky myth tidbit: Pan has declared a year of the nap. He carries a reed that gently plays lullabies every time someone starts to overthink. Elsewhere, minor gods have started swapping domains like trading cards. "Wanna switch foggy crossroads for leftover wishes?" someone asks. The answer is yes. The entire celestial docket now lives on a corkboard titled, "Maybe just try it for a bit." You pass Athena's office. It's been converted into a maker's lab. She's teaching owls to paint. Cognitive enrichment, she explains. One owl has invented a new shade of blue. It might be sentient. The new divine calendar no longer runs on centuries or wars or mortal heroics. It marks time in laughs shared, storms avoided, and metaphors whispered between stars. You help Notarius deliver a scroll. It's blank except for a small doodle of a flower with legs. Someone's idea for a new nature spirit, he coos. Might work. You spot Aphrodite spinning yarn from clouds. She's making scarves. For warmth, not seduction, she says, but then winks anyway. Poseidon now hosts storytelling circles inside tidal caves. One child's tale about a crab who becomes king makes it into the mythos. The crab receives a promotion and a tiny crown. Morale among crustaceans is at an all-time high. Ares has found peace in competitive pottery. Still aggressive, but now it's all about who can center the clay fastest. You stroll to the edge of Olympus and stare down at Earth, still spinning beneath it all. Mortals are dreaming again. Their prayers now sound more like curious questions and fewer frantic bargains. You hear someone whisper, "Do you think they'll keep the system?" and someone else answers, "Only if it helps them breathe." A breeze picks up, no paperwork attached. A cloud passes by shaped like an ampersand. You smile. The gods' haven tea stopped being gods. They've just remembered they don't have to manage everything. Sometimes, the myth is enough. You pass the newly constructed Temple of Unfinished Stories. Its motto, "All tales welcome, especially the weird ones." Inside, a single candle burns. It flickers a little as you enter, and the wax smells like rain and old dreams. There's a scroll waiting for you. It reads, "Tell us what you saw." Take your time. You sit. You breathe. You write. You wake up with ink on your fingers. The scroll you've been writing on, the one in the Temple of Unfinished Stories, is longer than you remember. It stretches out behind you in careful loops and joyful scribbles, full of half-spelled names, uncertain metaphors, and a doodle of a bear riding a chariot made of toast. That last bit might have been Dionysus again. You rise slowly, joints whispering like old papyrus, and step out into a morning that hums with possibility. Olympus hasn't exactly gone back to normal, but it has shifted. The gods' haven abandoned bureaucracy. Hera would never. But now, it's optional. Zeus, for example, is still required to submit storm intent notifications, but he is allowed to include illustrations. One of his recent drawings, lightning but friendly, is now hanging in the Ministry of Scrolls lobby. There's a duck in it, for reasons no one understands, least of all Zeus. You pass the old complaint chute, now repurposed into a suggestion slide. It glows when touched and purrs approvingly when someone submits an idea with decent punctuation. Someone, probably Hermes, has rigged it to drop glitter for particularly clever suggestions. Speaking of Hermes, you find him juggling apples with the newly promoted crab deity. They're both laughing. The apples have tiny labels: metaphor, hubris, lunch. One falls. Neither bothers to catch it. Quirky myth fact: the Muses have launched a divine improv night. Cleo, normally the quiet historian, turns out to be alarmingly good at slapstick. Urania fell off the stage laughing. Twice. Over by the reflecting pool, Hera herself watches the scene unfold. She's got a clipboard obviously, but the pen is behind her ear, unused. You sit beside her, again, and she sighs. But this time, it's not the sigh of someone managing 12 egos in a war about mist. It's a sigh that says, okay. This will do. Historians still argue whether this marks the age of relaxed divinity or simply the brief calm before the next cosmic paperwork storm. Some scrolls hint that Hera already has a backup plan, the eternal flowchart hidden beneath Mount Etna. Others say she's joined a celestial poetry club. Either way, you're not worried. Because across Olympus, things are growing. Not faster. Not louder. Just better. Fewer edicts, more listening. Less structure for the sake of structure, more space for absurd joy and moonlit accordion concerts. The filing harpy, she's been promoted to archival muse. She still loves order, but now she gets to write stories about it. Her current project, The Day Poseidon Misfiled the Ocean. It's a comedy. And you're part of it now. You help where you can untangle scrolls, soothe the fates when they disagree about narrative pacing, and occasionally reshelve thunderbolts by wattage. You're getting good at it. Not perfect. But that's sort of the point now. One evening, as twilight folds gently over Olympus, you stand near the edge again, watching the stars stretch their spines. A whisper reaches you, faint but unmistakable: update, pigeon training resumes at dawn. Signed, Notarius. You roll your eyes and laugh. A moment later, you find a sticky note on your sleeve. It's in Aphrodite's handwriting, of course. It reads, "Don't forget, beauty isn't always tidy. Also, I borrowed your ambrosia. You're welcome." You tuck it in your sleeve. You'll file it later. Probably. Somewhere, someone's arguing whether sunset counts as divine overtime. Athena's designing a productivity algorithm based on moon phases and daydream frequency. Apollo's writing a rock opera about bureaucracy. It's terrible. Everyone loves it. You watch as one last scroll unfurls itself in midair and lands softly on your lap. The ribbon is silver. The title reads, "To be continued." You smile. No form required. The stars pulse gently above you now, no longer glaring or demanding, just blinking slowly, like lullabies written in light. You step back from Olympus and into the quiet curve of sleep, where the scrolls don't need to be signed, and every whisper carries a dream instead of a directive. The wind rustles with a softened edge, as if it too has decided to leave the paperwork for tomorrow. Even the gods, in their infinite chaos, have found a way to pause. And in that pause, there's a space just for you. A place where stories breathe without pressure. Where the pigeon messenger naps in his helmet. Where Athena's owls mumble sleepy equations in their dreams, and Pan's reed pipe hums something low and gentle and round. Let your shoulders drop now. Let the tension fall away like a parchment unrolled too many times. Whatever duties wait beyond this night, they can wait one more hour. Let the myth drift paperless, borderless into the realm of quiet, where no one needs to categorize the stars. Where you aren't the god of anything. Just someone wandering the edge of Olympus, wrapped in a story that doesn't need an ending yet. Close your eyes. The ink has dried. The scrolls are shelved. The candle flickers out. And that strange little flower with legs, it's dancing in your dreams. Good night.